In this video, we're going to learn how to use the TV guided weapons on the F-4 Phantom from Heat Blur. Guys, welcome aboard the F-4 Phantom from Heat Blur for DCS World, and today we're going to take a look at these funny looking bombs with weird eyeballs on the end, the TV guided weapons. Now there's a variety of these: the Walleye, the Walleye 2, the Hobo, and we've got a variety of Maverick missiles. So we're going to tie all these together. A lot of them pretty much operate the same kind of parameters. We're going to take a look at these bombs and missiles and see what we can do with them. Now we're going to do a lot of the setup here, and then we're going to take off, and what I've done is establish a range on an airfield with a TACAN. We're going to tune up the TACAN, then we're going to see the actual ranges that we're getting locked up and firing. But first we're going to talk about what we need to do to set up. So of course we need to know which station we've got them set up on. In this case, we've got some walleyes on the inboard, so we would arm those stations here, and we would do the master arm switch, and we need to go into direct. Last, our weapon selection needs to go to TV. Now once we select TV, that should start up the warm-up cycle, which takes about 3 minutes to get the missile warmed up and ready to use. Now I'm unclear if that can only happen in the air, if the weight on wheel switch has some sort of effect on that, but one thing to note is that, at least according to the book, the real book for this weapon system, it only has about a 30-minute life cycle. So once you start it, get it warmed up, you've got 30 minutes to use it. Now we've got the imagery here, and this may be a factor that I just hot started this aircraft, so it may have already put in the warm-up time for us. But we're looking at the Walleye. This is what we're going to see. This does not move. This is stationary from the bomb. So we actually have to steer the bomb with the aircraft. And by steer, I really mean aim. We have to aim the bomb with the aircraft. The last thing that we need to do to set up here is go ahead and set our reticle. So we're going to go to air to ground, and then we're going to need to change the mils. And of course, as we've talked about in previous videos, this is going to change up and down when we've got an air to ground mode and in direct setting. So we're going to change these mils. The book says about 17, but you know, the idea is it's somewhere in the 20 to 15, 25 region. You're going to be just fine. But you don't want this off wild, because you're going to be doing a lot of aiming with this just to get you in the general vicinity, and then you're going to transition inside. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump into a jet that's already started. It's about 15 miles south of the airfield. I've already got the TACAN tuned up. We'll jump in, we'll quick set everything up, and then we're going to test out how far out we can track a target, both a building and a vehicle, and then we'll jump over and do the same thing with Mavericks, which essentially is the same, or just have a slightly different reticle setup for the mils. Alright, so I've got us in pause just so that we can make sure that we've got everything set up before we roll in. Alright, looking over here, we've got our station selected. We're master arm to arm. We're showing direct. We're up TV. Down here, we've got the TV on the repeater. We can see that screen here. We're on air to ground, and we've got 25 mils in. Again, just somewhere in that ballpark, and we'll do some comparison. I've got the TACAN tuned up, and we can see that we're just about 13.5 miles from the target, which is dead ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and unpause. We'll head in closer to the target. We probably won't get target lock till about 8 or 9 miles on buildings, and I've got some radar dishes, some vehicles out on the runway. It's probably going to be closer to about 5 miles, but we'll see what we get. All right, so just doing some quick comparison, we can see our gun reticle up there on the HUD and our screen are just about the same. It's arguable. We could make some adjustments and just kind of see what works best. We'll put in 17 and see what that gets us. Somewhere in that range. You can see the idea is that as long as we're looking roughly in the right area, because all we're doing is steering with the aircraft. So we've got some buildings out there. I can sort of see the vehicles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my trigger. I'm going to hold it down, and it's going to try to grab something. All right, so we're grabbing something. Let's see. We're at, yeah, about 7 miles. Okay. So if I release the trigger, it'll release that track. If I hold the trigger, it'll hold that track, and then I can fire the bomb, or release the bomb, I guess you should say. All right, so there's our vehicle. Same thing. I'm going to hold the trigger down, and there, I've got it. I'm holding the trigger. I've got a lock, and we're at 4.5 miles. Okay, you can see it's giving you that little indication, kind of like that little square is telling you, so I'm nose up now from the target, I'm nose down from the target. Ultimately, this is a bomb. I'm just going to put in some power, and I'm holding the trigger, and now I'm hitting the bomb release, and boom, the camera should reset for the next walleye, and meanwhile our bomb is away. All right, and there's Shaq on the target. All right, so again, just to review, we're going to get the reticle down on the target area. We're going to hold the trigger until it locks onto something. If you release the trigger and it's locked onto something, it's going to release that target. So maintain trigger grip and then use your bomb release to fire the weapon. All right, so let's jump into another aircraft with the Maverick. All right, so when we talk about the Mavericks, we have multiple options here. We've got the Alpha model, the Bravo model, and the Delta model. Now, fundamentally, the difference here is that the Delta is IR tracking, so it'd be really good at night. The other two are basically the same. Functionally, they're the same. It's an EO TV camera. I'm finding the same ranges with both of those missiles. Generally getting a vehicle track at about 4 miles and a building track out to about 9. With the infrared, the Delta model, I'm actually getting vehicles out to about 8 miles, but having a hard time getting buildings until I get much closer. And I think that's just because the IR signature. The Walleyes, both the 1 and the 2, as well as the Hobo, which is essentially a 2,000-pound TV guided bomb, I'm getting roughly the same ranges, setting those mills to around 25 to 17. And I'm getting locks at about 8 miles for buildings and about 4 to 5 miles for vehicles. And we're going to jump in with the Bravo model Maverick, and then we'll jump in with a Delta. Again, the Bravo and the Alpha are basically the same for all intents and purposes inside the cockpit. Now, one thing that is different for the Mavericks, I'm finding that the mills, generally about 40 for the reticle, is going to get you in there. And let me turn off my autopilot. Everything else is set up the same. I'm going to go ahead and turn on my TACAN just so that we can confirm ranges. So we're showing 12 miles to the target area. So slightly different control inputs for the Maverick. We're going to need to use the trigger to sort of uncage the Maverick so we can see it's now showing up on our screen. But we're going to use the air refuel release button on your stick, and that's what we're going to try to lock targets up with. And then we're going to fire with our bomb release switch. So same deal, I'm going to just get roughly in the area, and like I said, I'm going to start using that air refuel release switch, and there we're starting to get a track right there, and we're at, that's like 8.5 miles. We've got that building. So I'm going to press the trigger switch, and it's going to release. Okay, so slightly different than the Walleye. I'm going to lock with that air refuel button, and we're at 6 miles. That's the best I've ever gotten. And if I want to release that track, I'm going to pull the gun trigger and it's going to zip back to the front. So once more, I'm going to use that air refuel release button. And I'm just clicking it until I get a good lock. And use the bomb release to fire. Now, if I want to bring up another missile, I use my gun trigger switch, and it activates the next missile on the screen, and then I go through the same process. Now, one thing that is different between the Maverick and the Walleye, we can see here by the throttle, is this forward hand controller. And what it can do is actually move the Maverick left, right, up, and down. Now, what you're not going to see demonstrated is the same thing in the reticle. The reticle is going to remain where it's at. As long as you hold down that refuel button, you have control with that hand slew. Once you release the refuel button, it will no longer move, and once you click the trigger, it'll snap back to center. And lastly, like we said, we're going to take a look at the Delta model, the IR missile. So I'm going to set my mills. I'm going to activate one of the stations, go to direct. We're up TV, switch us down to TV, and we are ready to go. Go ahead and set our TACAN. We're getting our range. We're at 13 miles. And I release my autopilot. Once again, I'm going to hit the trigger, pull the trigger for the gun, and that opens up the screen. So what we can see different here with the Delta mount, already I can see hotspots out there. If I pull the trigger one more time, it's actually going to zoom in, and if I pull the trigger another time, it's going to zoom back out. So that's your just changing your zoom, and you can see those tracking gates there, or those field of view gates. But otherwise, it works the exact same. I'm going to use that air refuel release button and try to grab one of these hotspots. I can zoom in, and if it grabs something you don't like, just hit that air refuel release button again. Alright, so we've got a good track, and we are at 7 miles. I'm just going to put on some power, hit the bomb switch, fire. And just like with the Bravo and the Alpha, if I want to activate another missile, I'm just going to click the trigger one more time, and it reactivates. Now, another thing I just want to highlight is as we turn off of target, we get that steering cue that's pointing us back towards the target. So I'm going to push the stick down a little bit, bring it to the right, and it's going to bring us right back in there. But if we hit the trigger at this point, it's going to take us off and recage or reslave the Maverick back to the nose of the aircraft. Hopefully this video was helpful and get you guys putting warheads on foreheads. Appreciate all the YouTube members and Patreon supporters for keeping the lights on here at the channel. And thanks to you for watching, and if you could hit like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And otherwise, we will see you on the next video. Thanks a lot for stopping by. We'll talk to you later.